Hello and welcome to another edition of Alberta Solar Pioneers. My name is Dejan Ristic. I'm the oil and gas solar guy, and I'm here with Bill and Carmen. So welcome. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you.
Great, thanks.
So we are here at West End, Edmonton, in the community of LaPerle, and just recently Bill and Carmen went solar. So can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. We have only had our solar panels for about a month and a half right now, but we really felt it was important for a variety of different reasons, and are really excited to be finally having solar on our house. Yeah.
Wonderful, congratulations.
Thank you.
So they look really nice. So how many panels did you get roughly?
We have 20 in total.
20 in total, okay.
Yeah, in two groups. It's the system is designed so that right now it provides far more power than we consume. It's a grid-tied system, so we're feeding back most of the power we're producing right now back to the grid. That of course will change it throughout the year, and in the wintertime we'll probably be drawing more from the utility than we produce. But overall the system is designed so that we should produce more than or at least a break-even point for our consumption.
And just to be clear that I happen to be employed with another solar company, so the solar company that provided your system is not the same solar company as mine, so you're not promoting my solar company. We're doing this. The intention is to help spread the word how wonderful solar is, not only for renewable, for sustainability, for the financial of it, for sort of societal change and building an even more sustainable and better future. So my favorite question, and it was a question that I credit to a good friend of mine, Alan Robertson. He said, you should ask, how is your life now after you've gone solar versus how was your life before? So the floor is yours.
Well, it's still relatively new, but I think our first reaction, at least my first reaction, was that everything that we do right now that involves electricity feels like it's cleaner to us, that it has less of an impact, that somehow we're in many ways, providing our own source of electricity. And there's a mental ease around that we're not using as much of the world resources, that there's a much more of a cleanness to that, I would say. It also does feel a bit like this is free in a way, although it's not free, obviously.
There's an abundance.
There is, exactly, and so that's a very good way of putting it.
I was actually just going to say about you owning your own source of power. That's part of the reason why I named this YouTube channel Alberta Solar Pioneers, because pioneers make do with what they've got, and when they would clear an area and they were able to build a house or grow the wheat, grow the corn, right? So there's a sense of like, I've done this with my own, 2 pairs of hands, or however many people worked on it, and now there's a sense of accomplishment, like I've done this, I own it, it's mine, and it's really sort of like it's going full cycle of putting in the effort and then reaping the results and the rewards and having that fulfillment and satisfaction.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And it feels like we're taking less away from the world than we are, taking in. So
exactly.
It feels like somehow we're lessening our impact on the world. Yeah.
Even though I use the metaphor of clearing an area of land, but also we can plant trees and make more forests.
Yeah.
And it's about building something and then having that be useful.
Exactly. And
it's still so new and so. Abstract is one way. Obscure is really what I was looking for, the word obscure. That's what I'm hoping, and we're now sort of accomplishing that, to share this with as many people as we can. So I'm letting this channel grow organically. Okay. We'll see how it works.
Yeah.
Feel free to share it with your family and friends.
Okay, so, perfect. Yeah.
And then Bill, over to you. So how does it feel for you? Like
solar. Carmen and I have been thinking about solar for a long time, both individually and after we came together and got married. So we've only been in this house for a year. Prior to that, we lived in another part of Edmonton, and we seriously considered getting solar installed on that house as well. Got quotes from a couple of companies, and at that point, I think the only thing that was holding us back was uncertainty about whether the house we were in was going to be our long-term home or not. So when we moved into this house a year ago, this house, we were confident we were going to live in for a long time. So for us, it was the final. It removed the final uncertainty about whether to go forward with solar or not, and we certainly don't regret it. We are absolutely ecstatic about having it, and it really is just now that it's installed, it's seamless, it's easy. You really don't have to think about it unless you're interested. The system has an online app where you can look at the power production every day and your consumption, and I have that open every day just because I'm curious right now, and I like to watch what the system is doing. So, but really, it's completely seamless. Like we just get our power now from the rooftop installation. So it's really simple.
And there was no interruption to service, which was actually kind of surprised me. There was not even a 5 minutes of power being off. It just went from being Edmonton provided grid to now. I mean, we're still part of the grid, obviously, but to just being generating from solar power. So it was so easy.
Were there certain questions where, like you said, there was no interruption power, so that's one thing where you're like pleasantly surprised? Is there anything else that you were wondering about solar that when you learned the way that sort of the technology works or how it's going to be, that you were also like it helped you to make the decision to go renewable?
I think the maintenance aspect, because as Bill has mentioned, each of us have been really individually interested in solar for a long time, and so I've watched the progression of the technology over time. And I don't know if I have it entirely correctly, but in the old days, people needed to rotate panels. There were issues about whether or not you needed to clear snow off in the winter, as an example, and and degradation of panels. And I think a lot of those things now have been solved. And so for me, that was when we finally made the decision. Those were the questions that we had. And so, what we've discovered is really there is very little maintenance, and there really is not much more to do than just to have them there. And so, we were certainly committed if there was things to do that we would do that, but this just makes it, especially as we age, they're just there. We don't need to be climbing on rooftops. We don't need to be, rotating things. We don't need to have snow rakes. All those things that I think that sometimes people thought they have to do.
Yeah.
So, and so, I think there are advantages to being off grid, but also there are advantages to being on grid. And so, for us, it made sense at this point to be on the grid, and that's the ease of it right now. So.
And when you say very little maintenance, so what maintenance have you sort of been primed for potentially? Like,
I think mostly just there's gradual over a long period of time degradation from what I understand. But really there is nothing for us to do. We got extra insurance for hail because there can be some issues with hail damage. So we've just added a little bit to our home insurance, but even that's just been quite minimal. And but really there is not. There's really nothing. And as Bill has mentioned, we can go into the app, but really you don't need to. I mean, you can be, if you have no technological background or no technological interest, it's not complicated. It doesn't, you can get into it as deeply as you want, or you can just let it be there. And one of the things we did look at is we looked at the potential of a battery wall, but that doesn't make sense for us right now. So, we're aware that if the Edmonton power grid goes down, we're without power. And so I think sometimes people wonder about that.
That remains the same.
It's just So those were good things for us to be aware of. But
Yeah, my understanding is it's zero maintenance as well.
yeah,
So,
it really is.
like you said, down the road, let's say 30 years from now, it's
Yeah.
foreseeable you might need to exchange a panel or two potentially.
Exactly,
Right? So,
exactly. And even then, Bill's probably better with the numbers, but even then you're working at, is it 80% capacity after a while, or but you're still pretty, it's not like suddenly you're going to go from full capacity to nothing or to 20%.
yeah, so standard is manufacturers are warranting anywhere between like 85 to 93% after 25 to 30 years of operation. So
Exactly.
and I've actually done 2 other interviews so far, and both of them after 16 years and after 7 years, the drop has been 0. No drop
Wow.
whatsoever.
Wow.
So it's just
That's
the
good.
warranty,
Yeah.
but it's actually better than that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the technology has come so far, which is heartening. That there are a lot of people who've put a lot of work into making it really easy for people to adopt. That you don't need to be particularly, as I said, technologically savvy. You don't need to be climbing up on your roof if as you age. So yeah, easy, very easy.
One of the things that I'd like to explore with you, Bill and Carmen, is just how the sort of the nature of societal change. So we talked a little bit earlier this evening where we see, a tiny bit of a sprinkling of some solar systems around, like one here and then one like, maybe 20, 30 houses down, or, maybe in this neighborhood, I've counted probably about 10 to 15 that between LaPerle and Belmead that are in operation already. So now more and more people are going solar. So I'd like to just open the floor for two topics. One is how technology changes society, how it's a positive aspect, how it's helpful and valuable, how change works, like also what happens on a psychological level in the individual and in the family, and also it's basically, well, let's talk about that for now, and then we can kind of open it up to more.
Sure.
Yeah, I think as we said before, Carmen and I have been wanting to get a solar system for a long time, just because we think it's an important contribution to trying to mitigate climate change, something that we are fortunate enough to be able to do. And I really see it as the future. I think every house, in a very short time will have a solar system installed. And it will greatly reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, and I think that we're happy if we are relatively early adopters, that maybe other people will look at what we've done here and say, oh, maybe that's something we should think about. I've had quite a few discussions with friends and coworkers since we made the decision, once our system was installed, and I was actually surprised at how many people haven't really considered it because they don't really know anybody who's done it, so they're
It's
not
been obscure,
aware.
foreign to them.
Yeah, and they're not aware of government grants and rebates, which are very attractive right now. In Edmonton, there's programs offered by the city, and there's the federal government's program as well, which makes a significant difference to the installation acquisition costs. So it's I think for a lot of people, I think that information is still not out there. They just don't. They're not aware, I don't think, that of how significant a cost savings it could be.
It hasn't entered their consciousness yet.
No.
It's several steps away, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think there's a dawning awareness amongst people in the last year, I think, just because of the extraordinary increase in electricity costs, energy costs in general. But electricity costs in the last 2 years have just been phenomenally accelerating. So again, it's another real incentive to look at solar, and I think it's good timing, actually, if you were to take the plunge and invest now, I think the payback is probably even better than what's been forecast, even a couple of years ago. So.
It's, in a sense, it's one small step of change in the right direction in an area of colossal societal and global change and transformation.
Exactly. And I think, we live in a province where, people's bread and butter has been oil and gas. And so I think it's been a bit of a harder sell here because of that. I think there's been, sometimes the conversations that I've had with people have been really a bit confrontational around that, because I think people are concerned, rightly so, about how they're going to transition from their livelihoods that have been so embedded, whether they're actually involved in oil and gas or not. And so, I think one of the other things that, certainly with the work that Bill and I have done in other areas is around that there is a way to transition that, that there is a way to still provide
and
jobs,
reconcile it,
and that it's not either, it's not all or either, right? Or it's not one or the other, and that, that people can still, people have skills in this province that they can transfer into this new technology, that it doesn't need to be a polarizing kind of thing, and so
that's part of the message I want to bring, is that we can
yeah.
actually have this be connecting for our society.
Exactly, and I know, like, for instance, when we've talked to some of the electricians who did the installation on our roof, for instance, they've often worked on mega oil and gas projects. They're now working, because more and more increasingly there are also large solar projects being developed as well. You see more of industry getting involved in that. I know I used to work a lot with First Nations people, and there are, sort of many First Nations are actually leading the charge on that, and are transforming their communities this way. And so there are ways to provide jobs. It's not a matter of suddenly everybody's going to be jobless, particularly in this province. And so I think it's a bit of a harder sell in this province than it is maybe in other areas. One of the other things that we considered as well is that even though we may not, at some point we will recoup our investment in terms of finances. But one of the other things that Bill and I talked about is that, when it comes to a point of selling this house, we do believe that will be a feature that more and more young people, for instance, who are looking for housing, will consider it an asset, that already there's solar on the house. They don't have to do anything to do that, because I think young people get that. It's going to be the continuing lives of themselves and their children. And just like 25 years ago, computers and the internet were a novelty, I do believe that in the same amount of time or less, as Bill has said, you will see solar everywhere, and it'll just be what we do. And so I think it for us, it also made sense as a long-term investment too, on that level.
So just to respect your time, let's see here. We're still live, so just to respect your time and sort of just to bring it in for a landing. So what's sort of your key takeaways that the listener, the viewer, needs to keep in mind? Like, in summary, how do you like what's the sort of the main thing that you enjoy about going solar? So there's, if you can just summarize it for us, and then what do people need to know about going solar in summary?
I would say, do it. It's easy, and
it's easy,
and it's a necessity. In our times, I really think that. I think we're certainly seeing the effects of climate crisis here, and so I think it's both easy and a responsible thing to do.
And I think, as Carmen says, it is really easy, and there are a lot of good companies in Alberta. It's difficult to go wrong. There are a lot of really experienced solar companies in this province, and they make the whole process really simple, from assisting with the grant and rebate programs. It's completely seamless, their service, and so it couldn't be easier, to make the decision. And I don't think, I think it's hard to go wrong with choosing a company that will provide you with a top-notch product.
Mm-hmm. And I'd just like to add on the topic of how connecting solar is like across all walks of life. So essentially, we all realize that we need to do something to build a better future, because there is an issue and we need to do something, right? So solar being sustainable, right? Solar energy is free. So we have free energy that's accessible to us. That's one major force acting on our world, on our society. There's another major force, which is inflation now is real and it's not going away. So now for a family, whether I'm employed in oil and gas, or I'm employed in the governmental sector, or in education, or healthcare, I see my bills increasing. And this is a way to curb that and mitigate the risk on my family's budget. So it's just so phenomenal how well it sort of solves, many problems.
Exactly, right? And I think, if the war in Ukraine has taught us anything too, it's about it increases our independence as well, that we're not so reliant on what's happening elsewhere in the world too, that it
does.
It allows us that sense of, we know where our energy is coming from, it's clean in that sense. So.
Absolutely. So as markets in the US are going to affect markets in Canada, so now we're bolstering our individual local strengths. So.
Exactly. Yes.
Thanks for being on the show.
Great.
You're welcome. Thank you.